All right. Good morning, everyone. It is 11:05 and October 19, 2021. We're going to call the regular Electric Utility Board meeting to order.
Mr. Chair, it's, what time is it? 11:04. And I'll call the City Council into session. Sorry.
Thank you. Has anyone signed up for public comment? All right. Makes that easy. We are now recessing into executive session in accordance with 1 VTCA Government Code 551.086 on competitive matters of LP&L, 2 VTCA Government Code 551.071 seeking advice of and consultation with LP&L's attorneys on a matter in which the duty of the attorney to the governmental body under the Texas Disciplinary Rules of Professional Conduct of the State Bar of Texas clearly conflicts with Chapter 551 of the Government Code and seeking advice of its attorneys about pending or contemplated litigation or settlement offers, and 3, VTCA Government Code 551.074 to the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, and/or duties of a public officer or employee, being the Director of Electric Utilities, General Counsel, Chief Financial Officer, and Director of Customer Service. The Lubbock Power and Light Board is now an exec.
City Council will hold an executive session today for the purpose of consulting with the city staff regarding competitive matters of the public power utilities under Section 551.086 of the Texas Government Code, and pending or contemplated litigation or settlement offers, hold consultation with attorney under Section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code, and finally, personnel matters under Section 551.074 of the Texas Government Code. City Council's recessed into executive session.
It is, we'll go with 12:18, and the Electric Utility Board has now reconvened into open session.
City Council is recessed from the executive session back into open session, and it's 12:18. Council is adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Masco. All right, that brings us to item 6, to approve the minutes from the regular EUB meeting on September 27, 2021. I would entertain a motion for those. So moved. Have a motion by Mr. Boatman. Need a second? Have a second by Ms. Stafford. All those in favor? Is there any discussion there? Not. All those in favor do so raising your hand saying aye. 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 Opposed by the same? Carries 7-0. Item 7, Mr. McCollum.
Maybe it's red. Red means it's on. Okay, just a couple of highlights from the written material in your packet. Page 16, some of the media coverage. There was good media coverage, I think, on the notice that we sent out that we were going to resume disconnections for non-payment. You know, it'd been quite some time since we had been doing cutoffs, and so we've resumed that process, and it's going well. We're limiting the number of disconnects per hour, so that we're doing about 20-25 per hour, so that we don't overload our call center as folks call in and try to get their service restored. But I think we've done a good job of appealing to the public to take action. Don't wait until you get disconnected to get it fixed. And I think we've had good response from customers once they are disconnected to make arrangements, either payment arrangements or get assistance from some of the aid agencies that are available in the city, including community development has some funds available that can help customers that need help. So that's going very well. On page 17, there was some media coverage on some car wrecks. We've had some pretty bad car wrecks, people running over our poles in the last couple of months, and the one that's highlighted there on page 17 caused a pretty lengthy outage. It hit a section of our feeder line as part of the feeder system had been switched around so that SPS could do some work on their Dowd substation. So it wound up taking out quite a lot of customers, and for an extended period of time until we get that repaired. And there weren't good ways to switch that around since we already had some feeders out of service during that instance. So On page 24, call center activity is improving. If you look at the chart on the left-hand side there, the second one from the top, you can see our average wait time has reduced now to below 4 minutes, which is really good. We've added a lot of call center employees. As soon as we get one class filled and trained, we put them on the floor, and we start another class. So we are adding people as quickly as we can add them to get folks manning the call center. And so Jamie and her team have done a good job of continuing to hire and fill those positions and get them trained and on the floor helping out. I think that was all I wanted to highlight. Any questions on anything?
Mr. Taylor? Far right button. There you go.
Mr. McCullough. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You've probably reported this, and I didn't catch it. What is the estimated time to return to the facility over here?
Yes, sir. We're hearing by the end of the year we'll be back in there. One of the concerns is furniture. Because of the supply chain issues that we're seeing across the country, furniture may be the lagging item there. I think the facility will be repaired and ready for us to move if we can get the furniture in there. Because basically all the furniture in the basement had to be replaced. It was all water damaged and had to be replaced.
Ms. Depard?
Mr. McCullough, how many people do we have answering the call center? Because you said we keep having classes. So is it class of like 5 or 6 people, and then we keep adding, or how does that work?
Yeah, we've got a staffing of about 50 people, and we don't have that many staffed right now, but we're continuing to hire to try to get up to the numbers that we need. And there's a lot of turnover in that group. We have people that leave for other positions in other organizations. When we added the 4 people, the higher level CSRs, that drew from other parts of the organization, so that created some vacancies that we had to fill. But we're doing good. I think it's going well. The training facility, we are using the training facility over at the UCSC. The top floor is still available, and the IT department made sure that we could make use of that training room, which is really ideal for getting our new people trained.
Mr. McCullough, I mentioned a few months ago about retention of customer service reps. Have we considered any options to try to keep from losing CSRs?
Mr. Fields, I have talked to the HR director about that and have not gotten a response on that question. So I will reiterate that this question is coming from the board and they would like an answer. So,
okay.
As you may know, I don't control salaries. I don't control compensation for staff. That's all done through the city umbrella. The city manager, HR director control those salaries. They've been working with us on positions where we needed some extra compensation to keep employees. So I think the new HR director has done a good job of helping us deal with the critical positions in our organization. This is one that I haven't gotten a response on yet.
Ms. McCullough, if I could just emphasize a little bit from my few years of experience, if we don't plug this problem, we will consistently have this problem and consistently be training employees for other companies. And it'll impact us across the board in our call center.
Yes, sir. You're preaching to the choir. I would say, I will mention that we were short of 4 analysts as well, positions you're very familiar with, but the HR director was able to get us increased pay in those positions, and we've been able to recruit two analysts to fill those 4 vacancies, so we've still got 2 to fill, but we have made progress in that area. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, that brings us to item 8. Joe or Renew, who's going first? Or maybe just one?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Welcome.
Let's get started. Hope y'all are doing well. Walk to the last presentation I'm going to have for the financial statement because it's September. So for the next couple of months, we're going to take a break. Just a taking break. I did not phrase that very well. All right. So in the month of August, actually, we had some good things. Our pooled cash and cash equivalents continue to stay lower than what the level that we are so used to of seeing. That is due to something related to timing variances because we do draw down on our funds when the month or two lag, along with the fact that we have made few really, really big payments in this year. Now, our receivable, on the other hand, continues to increase because we are just now starting our collections activity. We do have a T-cost revenue that is now being included in our AR as well, and our days turnover and receivable is just slightly higher than where we were last year. Hopefully, when we start the disconnect activities, it's going to come back down to the normal level, and people will start paying us. And our capital assets portion of it, as you would see, now our construction in progress has gone down to $23 million, nothing to worry about it. All that money and all that asset has been now transferred into the transmission plant's assets. So that number is just shifting from one category to the other. When we take a look at the next page, our balance sheet liability portion of situations, our accounts payable stays pretty consistent with where we were at the year end. This is just a matter of timing and how many invoices we are paying. One thing I would like to point out, it notes payable. You did see the same balance of $245,600 last month. You will see it again this month. That balance did get true up in September's financial statement. We did issue our bonds, and all the bond entries were being made, and the funds that we received were on September 9th. So you would see that change in bonds payable amount being increased in next month's financial statement, which will be presented with the audit. Now, income statement, moving forward to the next one, our charges for the services has increased because our increased rate, summer months that are just being part of it, and we are under collected at this point in time. On the other hand, though, our purchase of fuel and power costs consistently keeps on increasing because, of course, we are not seeing the lower gas prices as we saw in the past couple of years, so we would see a slight increase in that. Overall, though, we are in an operating income of positive $11 million, so doing good there. Our statement of cash flow, again, our cash flow from operating activity is positive, but it's barely positive. That is just the timing differences of how we paid our accounts payable and all the big payments that we made for all the invoices that were lagging from our construction cost coming in. From financing activity, we are in a negative $1 million, which is not a bad thing. It's just the purchase of capital assets and how we are accounting for it. And from the investing activities, we're in a positive $500,000. That's just the timing of when we move the fund. That takes care of all of our financial statements for this month. Any questions?
Questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Taylor?
Randy, on the statement of cash flows, I noticed your other receipts and payments year to date, $39 million.
Mm-hmm.
Does that include the hold harmless payment?
That does.
Okay.
That is actually the bulk of.
That's what I figured.
Mm-hmm. Yep, you're right.
Because when you look down in your reconciliation, you've got the same number, but we don't have the change in the hold harmless payment in the reconciliation for the operating activities. So anyway, I figured that had to be the bulk of that because when you total up everything else, you just can't get there without that number.
Nope,
So,
that's the only number.
okay. I guess the other thing, and you didn't comment on it, but I noticed in the balance sheet on the liabilities, we actually went from being over-collected $12.5 million at the end of September to being under-collected $5.8 at the end of August. So, anyway, so that's really a debit.
In
but
all
we're just
reality,
keeping it in
yes.
the same place. So,
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have always kept it in the same bucket just to create less confusion, and we would know year
Yeah.
after year where we are trending.
Right.
So it is a debit. You're absolutely right at this point in time.
Mr. Chairman, I think that's all the questions I have.
Thank you, sir. Other questions?
All right, thank you,
Thank you.
guys.
Is that all on the financials? Item 8? Anything else? Nope. All right, we're not going to skip over item 9. We did that last month, so we've got 2 months coming up now for Mr. Rose here.
Well, I was actually going to keep this pretty brief. Just wanted to cover a couple of things. Obviously, there's a lot of action going on in Austin between the special sessions and the rulemakings that are going on from what came out of the regular session, Senate Bill 2 and 3, and the House bills that reform the market. As I've told you before, it doesn't seem like there's any desire to really take up any items related to us or our industry during these special sessions. You still have folks that are filing bills, but it's not on the governor's call, does not seem to be something that he's going to put on the priority. It seems like the idea is that there was enough guidance, enough framework that was given in the omnibus bill and some of these kind of ancillary bills that's enough for them to do their rulemakings and get to where they need to be. Additionally, I think towards the end of June, the governor put out a memo that further outlined what he expected to see from the Public Utility Commission and ERCOT related to this, and again reiterated that they have all the tools that they need. So just a couple of the big items that we're participating in through Texas Public Power Association are really weatherization and the designation of critical facilities. Both of these items were key in the winter storm. Weatherizing the plants and the adjacent facilities, but also make sure that you designate critical facilities so they don't get shut down, during the storm. So one of the things that we have expressed, and interestingly enough came up in a Senate Business and Commerce Committee hearing within the past week or so, was the fact that we can do all the work that we need to in our industry to weatherize the plants and our facilities, but if the Railroad Commission and the natural gas facilities do not follow in step, it's kind of all for naught, because if you can't get the gas to the plants, you can't run the plants, it doesn't work. So that was an item that they really talked about during the session. A lot of people talked about the fact that, the rules that were going to be made based off the legislation would leave the Railroad Commission out. And so, oddly enough, Senate Business and Commerce met, like I say, I think 2 weeks ago, and the senators on that committee seemed to wake up all of a sudden and realize that there are a different set of rules for the Railroad Commission than there are for us. And specifically, the executive director of the Railroad Commission was kind of put under fire because they were asking him, all of these things are happening this fall. How come you all are not promulgating rules until the next year? But that's what was written in the legislation. So there was kind of a dust up there. There was should we bring the Railroad Commissioners back in here? Since then, it's kind of quieted down, but it will be interesting to see in the next couple of months the pressure they put on. They were very surprised that the Railroad Commission had really not even started their rulemaking process in full like the PUC has. So we'll see if that changes their timeline, but obviously heading into this winter, a lot of work's being done in the rulemaking. One thing that, beyond that I wanted to point out is that just from a general schedule, a general timeline, just this past week, turn that back on, there was a work session on market redesign, and that's something that we're watching very closely, looking at how you incentivize generation and various things in the market going forward. Forever, there's been a lot of talk about the market being focused on being an energy-only market, being efficient, cost-efficient in these things. But after the winter storm, there's a real emphasis now on reliability. And so how do you kind of marry those two going forward? So they had a work session where they had, ERCOT and Vistra, NextEra, LCRA, kind of all these different market participants coming in. One thing that we, not just as Texas Public Power Association, but we specifically here in Lubbock have stressed is that We just left a market that was a capacity market, and we left it for very specific reasons. So we do not now want to see, as we enter into the ERCOT market, that they just pick up and develop a full capacity market like we just left in SPP. So we spoke with Shelley Botkin, who is now the head of Texas Public Power Association, have made our feelings known. We'll probably talk with others down there just to make sure that, you know, there can be an in-between space here where you have a strategic reserve, kind of like Warren Buffett and his group proposed during the session, that can achieve some of these things in terms of reliability, but let's not move to a full-on capacity market. And Vistra and some others that have put in plans that have been passed around really lean heavily on moving that direction towards the capacity market. So we're watching it closely. We've kind of made our opinions known. In terms of timelines, you know, just coming up this week, October 21st, the PUC will issue their draft plan on a market design, so we'll see what they put out there. There will be work sessions that follow into November, and then there's a goal of a December 19th date to finalize the market redesign plan. So we'll see what they put out this week, see what they've kind of proposed and adopted, and then take part in that. One of the nice things as they've started putting together some of these committees, these new committees, one, for example, is the Energy Reliability Council. This was one that came out of the omnibus bill. It was kind of a new set of advisors to look over the industry, is that we do have folks that we're very close to in the municipal world, one of which is Tom Hancock, who works for Garland, who we're very close to, that was placed on that committee. So we're still seeing folks that we know well that are in positions of influence that we can speak to and let them know kind of what our thoughts are on these different things as we go forward. So that's very encouraging. Just wanted to also point out that they are continuing to fill ERCOT positions in terms of board members. And so they, you know, appointed 2 new board members in Paul Foster and Carlos Aguilar to ERCOT. Paul Foster will serve as the chair of the ERCOT board. So they're starting to fill those positions. They're starting to fill some of the positions of these new committees that were created in legislation. And from what we've seen thus far, you know, that looks very promising. Jimmy Glotfeltney is another one. He was appointed to the PUC as a commissioner. So you have Commissioner Glotfeltney, you have Lori Kobos, who was appointed previously, who used to run the Office of Public Utility Council. Obviously, Peter Lake, who's the chairman, and Will McAdams, who came from the legislature, who we have a really good relationship with. So thus far, the appointments, at least in our opinion, have been solid ones, people that we have some level of relationship with. So encouraged by all of this. Securitization, as you all know, we've watched closely, but it's really the market redesign, weatherization, and designation of critical gas facilities that we're watching very closely. And there will be things that will impact us here in Lubbock, but luckily, given where we are in Lubbock, a lot of this work that we've already completed might be things that they mandate. And it's one final thing, that's something we watch too, is as we go through this, making sure that municipal utilities that have already performed this work get credit for performing that work as they create new rules. So real quick run through, kind of 30,000 feet of everything, but just that's where we stand today. And I think in the next 60 days, we'll see these things really short up and have a good idea of what it's actually going to mean in terms of an impact to us. But right now, we're just participating as much as we can. So,
Questions for Mr. Rose? Ms. Stafford?
Matt, a couple of questions. The legislation that passed is not prohibitive to the Railroad Commission or any of the gas lines to weatherize. It does not prohibit it. It just doesn't mandate it, correct?
it's a situation where they're on a different timetable.
Right.
And there's some question as to self-designation of critical versus something that is in a rule that this is critical.
Right, and that was my question.
Yes.
On the critical infrastructure. As I understand, you're supposed to say, I am critical infrastructure, so ERCOT would know. Have they done that, or are they just saying, no, we're not?
No, they are. And really in terms of what's in legislation, I was mostly focusing on the weatherization part of it. You know, is this particular pipeline critical to the supply chain getting to the power plant? And so that's been some of the talk coming out of the Senate Business and Commerce Committee is, if you can say whether your pipeline is critical or not, maybe there needs to be more teeth there to say that, kind of like all of the power plants are critical. You all need to weatherize. Should you do the same thing with the gas lines? Or should they be able to say that this one is not really feeding this, so it's not important? Just making sure that everybody's in the same boat, fully weatherizing, so there's not any gaps in the chain.
Right, so is it still in flux, so the gas company, the gas lines can decide if they're critical infrastructure or not? It's self-regulating, in other words, they can decide for themselves.
Well, and that too, that's where you're starting to look at, I think what the senators, and it's just my opinion, but what the senators wanted to hear was, when the Railroad Commissioner Director got up there, how far along are you on this? And what are your, how are your rules going along? And when he said that they really haven't started that in full, that got them very frustrated. And then I think that's when they woke up and realized that perhaps through rulemaking or otherwise, we need to kind of clamp down on this, but have not seen anything after that from the legislature in terms of actually bringing people in and changing anything. But again, by rulemaking, where our industry was told you need to get all of this done by the end of the calendar year, in statute for the Railroad Commission, it puts them in the next calendar year, the next fall. And so they've been following what's in legislation. And then all of a sudden they got in trouble for not moving faster. And that's when
So
that's
there's
where the
really
disconnect's
nothing
been.
in place on weatherization for the gas lines this winter?
I'm sorry?
There's nothing in place for winterization of the gas pipelines for this winter, because you said they have until the end of the year.
Not officially, no, ma'am.
So it's October, so they don't really have to do anything until
Correct.
after winter's here.
Correct. Because their rulemaking and their timeline is, and their deadline is kind of this time next year. So I think perhaps maybe some of the committee members are hoping that like a public shaming will get them to hurry up. But by the letter of the legislation, by statute, they have until end of next calendar year to go through their process.
Right, so really, in essence, if something happens again, we know exactly where the problem is.
Very possibly so.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Matt, didn't they make an exemption for the Railroad Commission? Some of their members can apply for an exemption with a ridiculously low fee, $150?
I believe that is, I don't know, but I do know that there's various points where they get carved out of what the
There's
others are
some loophole
mandated
that
to
they
do.
gave them.
Yes, sir. But the main focus really here recently has just been them realizing that they wrote a piece of legislation that gives them a far longer lead time to get things done than others.
Yeah.
And, just, it's not like they weren't told over and over again when session was in that these loopholes kind of existed. But now in practice, they're seeing it, and there are some that are frustrated by it, for sure.
Any other questions or comments from Ms. Rose? All right, thanks, sir. That brings us to item 10. Matt just mentioned PUC, getting new board members. We are also having two folks that will be going off. And so y'all know how this process goes. We filled Mr. Field's spot less than a year ago. How long? A year? Right at a year? About a year, right before all the fun stuff. But if you would, if you have any recommendations of anyone, please get them to go to the city secretary, fill out the same form that we filled out. It's still the same process. That sign-up sheet is still the same that we saw when Mr. Fields was there, so we haven't had any new folks show that they're interested. Y'all know our role is to provide the recommendations to city council. City council ultimately decides, but we've got to have some recommendations on there. So if anyone has any of those, please have your folks there. Same goes for any citizens out there that are listening today or that watch these. If you're interested, please go to the city secretary's office, fill out a boards form. It'll let you state which board you want to be on. There's several other ones as well, but we need that to take place to get some new folks out there so we can find qualified individuals. And until we find those folks, we'll keep moving forward.
What's the timeline?
Timelines to get some people on there that, I guess it is until those positions are filled, so, you know, we need to get out there and shake some bushes, I guess, or shake some trees, whatever it may be, but, to find some folks. So, that is your task, that's your homework for today, or for the month. Any other discussion on item 10? If not, that brings us to the consent agenda, items 11 through 17. I would entertain a motion to approve those if there's not any individual ones there.
So moved.
Have a motion by Mr. Fields, second by Eddie. Mr. Schultz, welcome, by the way. Thanks, sir. Perfect timing, right? With that, is there any discussion there? If not, please do so by raising your right hand, saying aye if you're in favor. Aye. Opposed by the same. That one carries 8-0. Brings us to item 18. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.